Then it got really interesting because I thought, well, there's Erie and Ontario. Now, I didn't announce all at once I was going to do all 5 Great Lakes. I think people kind of figured it out after I did Huron. But I figured for the marketing oomph, I was supporting Big Brothers Big Sisters at the time.
Right, right.
So we wanted to get as much marketing oomph as we could for the cause.
Right.
So,
and many of your swims are cause related. So.
yeah, actually they were every single one of
Even
them
the
except
first
for
one.
except for the Stanley Superhumans, where they just wanted me to be on the show.
Right. Yep. Yep. So you're also doing this for others. So okay. So number 2 was Huron.
Right.
Okay.
Then there's Erie and Ontario, which are both narrower. And so I thought I got to keep this interesting for the media. I mean, if he's already done Michigan and Huron, where's the drama to say, well, now I'm going to do a swim that's less than what I've already done. So I thought, let's get back to my triathlon roots. So my plan was to swim 26 miles across Lake Erie, then run a full 26.2-mile marathon, then complete an Ironman distance bike segment, 112 miles up to Lake Ontario, then swim 32 miles across Lake Ontario into Toronto, and do this in all one continuous event. So I call a press conference at the Grand Rapids Community College. Good turnout, which I was happy about. You know, made posters, had all these displays, really ready. And I was ready for the questions like, Jim, this sounds impossible. How do you propose to do this? This just doesn't sound humanly possible. Can't be done. So I'm ready for all those questions. They never came. It was all the questions were like, well, when are you going to start? How long do you think it's going to take you? And I was disappointed because I'm like, do you guys I mean, I didn't say this, but I'm thinking, do you realize what I'm proposing here? But after I'd already swam Michigan and Huron, they just thought, well, Jim Dreyer says he can do it. He'll do it.
Yeah.
Do you realize?
Yeah.
The swimming, the running, the biking, and then going back to the swimming, and then, you
needed your key messages to like, here's what I want to cover.
Right.
You were waiting for them to ask.
Right. And instead, they were just like, well, when are you going to do it? Okay. I'm waiting for the drama. I tried to create all the drama. But there ended up being drama.
Yeah.
Because I swam across Erie. There's quite a current at the end. I was struggling, fighting quite a bit at the end, but got in there, still felt great. Ran ashore. The media is meeting me on the shore. Quickly changed into my running clothes and started running down this long sandy peninsula called Long Point. It ends up in a town called Port Rowan, and that's where I was going to get on my bike. Well, 17.1 of the 26.2 miles I was going to run was all through beach sand. So I'm running, and some of the media is running with me, the media that was in shape.
Yeah.
You would have been running with me, Candace, I'm sure.
I have a knee issue.
Knee issue, arm issue, man.
I know.
What goes on in this
We're all
studio?
beat up. We're all
what
beat up.
happens in here, guys?
we come in with scars.
Got clubs and. But anyway, as I'm running down the beach, I start getting really dizzy and I'm zigzagging all over the place. And I called for my paramedic and I said, I think I need some oxygen. I feel like I'm going to pass out.
Yeah.
And I remember one media person with a microphone asking me, well, how do you feel? I said, I feel great. I just can't stay conscious. How is that possible? How can you feel great, but you just can't stay conscious? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, we learned a lot after the fact. Going from horizontal for the length of time it takes to swim across the Great Lake and then going vertical and then exerting vertically. First, the blood was flowing from your heart horizontally. Now it has to pump uphill to your brain. It's tougher, and you start to become oxygen deficient in the brain. You start to lose consciousness. Another thing is your wetsuit is compressing against your body. It's like a compression suit. And then when you take that off, my paramedic explained this to me. Something with the veins is different too.
Right, they're not being pressed on, they're more free flowing. Okay.
Right, and so the blood's flowing differently because of that too. And so basically what happened is I made it through the run, which was tough. It's, tough run through the sand anyway. Made it into Port Rowan, got on my bike, and instantly lost consciousness. Boom!
Wow. Get a helmet on.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good.
It's really hard to bicycle, to bike when you're unconscious.
Yeah.
I learned that.
Yeah.
And so they, the crew did the smart thing and called off the swim. And I remember, you know, I did a few interviews then, but I was doing an interview in the car on the way back. This is the first time I heard this. A reporter asked me, Jim, how does it feel now that you've failed?
Oh.
And I'm like,
What?
wow. And it's not, you know, it's not because I'm, you know, so arrogant that I can't handle failure. I set myself up. I set the bar really high. But actually, what I had just done is I had set a new solo duathlon world record. But I was going for a triathlon world record.
Oh, wow.
So that was viewed as a failure, even though I came home with a record.
Because you said, I'm going to do this.
Right, I was going to do a triathlon solo world record, and I only came home with a duathlon world record.
That's it, man. That's a bummer.
Yeah, and I'm like, wow, this is the jaded world we live in.
Well, I think a lot of it, too, is just in general, people don't understand what it is. People don't understand the exertion and how unusual it is. Sort of like you were saying at your news conference, how people weren't asking what you thought they should ask because you're like, this is a big deal.
I know.
But those of us who, you know, would rather like binge on Netflix, we don't quite get. We don't quite get like, oh, okay, well, he's just really athletic and he can do this. And people run triathlons all the time. And what, you know, like sort of like, yeah, it's bigger, but they don't quite understand how big.
Yeah. What I've found is I've really gravitated toward the military. A lot of my crew is military. A lot of my best friends are military. It's just good to be surrounded with people who have that same mindset. They get it.
Right. They know how hard it is. And
I'll sometimes be in crowds where I'll be talking and just somebody will ask me a question and I'll just I'll give them the honest answer.
Yeah.
And it never occurs to me it's unusual because I'm just so used to it. I've been doing it for so long until I look and see everybody with their mouths hanging open. I'm like, oh, that's weird, right? You know? But I came back a month later, got together with my crew, and we figured out physiologically what had happened. You know, the whole horizontal to vertical thing. And I said, we need to change this.
And I want to say the reason that doesn't happen in triathlons is that people aren't swimming as far. Is that why? Because people in triathlons, people do that. They swim, they bike, they run. So they are horizontal, vertical. But the difference was that you had gone how many miles?
Well, by the time I was done, it was 30 miles.
30 miles swimming.
And then I biked 100. Well, no, then I ran 26.2.
Right.
In the sand.
So it was that difference. Okay.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, in an organized triathlon, they always have the swim first because they don't want, you know, for liability reasons, a bunch of tired swimmers getting in the water.
Right, right.
Which makes sense.
Right.
We decided that for the length of time I'm going to be swimming, I need to do the vertical stuff first. I need to run and bike first and swim last. Now, there's no book you can check out of the library. I'm not dating myself there. There's nothing you can research on Google.
Then you can look up on microfiche.
Right, exactly. Wow, I just said library. For the young people, the library is a building. It's got lots of books in it. Okay?
And I'm just putting up some video you have here that's
from rough water
swimming and stuff, swimming, running, all that, the stuff we're talking about now, biking.
Yep, exactly. But there was no precedent. So we're learning as we're going along. And, you know, did we really know that it was a good idea to do the vertical stuff first and then try to swim last? Or was I setting myself up to drown? I don't know.
Right.
We didn't know, but we knew the other way didn't work.
Yeah.
So I thought, I think this is going to work. So we started at the end of Long Point, that same place where I started the run, the Long Sandy Peninsula.
Right.
Ran 26.2 miles into Port Rowan, Ontario. Felt great. Got on my bike. The crew took a wrong turn. Instead of 112, I biked 130 miles. It happens.
You know?
You know,
Just a few miles.
A few more miles. Ended up at Niagara-on-the-Lake, swam 32 miles into Lake Ontario, and I had accomplished my triathlon.
Yeah.
But then I kind of surprised people and said, but you know what? Originally, I was going to swim Erie and Ontario in the same event.
Right.
So I've accomplished my triathlon, but I want to do a double crossing of Ontario because I didn't cross Erie this time.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, okay. So I turned around and I started swimming back, you know, to Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Yeah.
And I almost made it, but a storm was moving in. It just kept getting rougher and rougher and rougher. And 13 miles from the coast, they finally pulled me from the water because we had a big sailboat with a big keel as a support boat. But I remember swimming beside that boat and seeing that keel come way up out of the water.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And you know, they were starting to think about capsizing, which is very unusual to do in a sailboat with, with a large keel. So, you know, when the captain says, that's it, you know,
Right,
for the
you got a
safety of everybody on board.
Right.
And so I'm almost 13 miles short of a double crossing. But physiologically, we figured out how to do this.
And was that was that a new world record then?
Yep.
So
When I made it to
okay.
Toronto, it technically was. Everything else was going to be icing on the cake.
Yeah.
And I just said I was going to do Erie and Ontario in the same swim, so I want to do a double crossing.
Right, right.
But Mother Nature always wins.
Yeah.